Coming up on this week's episode of the EV Resource Podcast, I've got a special interview lined up for you with Brian Denton of XS Motorworks talking about his DIY EV Supercar Split Decision. I do also have a few news articles after that and an EV resource announcement as well. Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of the EV Resource Podcast. I am Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answer your questions about electric vehicles. Special thanks to Titan Auto and Tire in Moseley, Virginia for their support for this podcast. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. Before we get to the interview with Brian, I do want to remind you that if you like the podcast, like some of the content that I'm bringing you, please go ahead and like the video and subscribe so that you'll get all the future episodes automatically. I'm very, very excited to share with you the interview with Brian about this do-it-yourself EV home-built supercar on pretty much a shoestring budget as well. So without further ado, let's get to it. What I wanted to do is just share the exciting project that you're working on, because anybody that can go out there and just buy a car, that's one thing, but building your own is a completely different ball of wax.
Yeah, some people might consider me a little crazy on that one.
That's all right. Crazy people are the ones that get things done right, or at least done.
I know just enough to be dangerous and not enough to know not to do it. So I guess maybe just a quick background might be a little bit helpful. So, I've actually built multiple kit cars in my life. I've actually got I had the Porsche 356, the old bathtub, and I have a Ferris Bueller's Day Off car. So that's actually got a Ford Mustang engine in it, a newer one. So I'm no stranger to cars. By trade, though, I'm actually a CTO and a consultant nowadays. So I spend about 50% of my time in my shop and 50% of the time consulting. But when I kind of started this, I actually started going to make a gas car. And then, the electric was starting to take off and it was kind of interesting. I'm a gearhead by trade. So, it doesn't matter to me if it's gas or electric. It's
sure.
How fast can it go? Performance aspects, how can it handle that kind of thing? Obviously, electric has got just crazy amounts of offline torque, and versus the gas, which has to kind of spin up. I got two camps really, the gas and the electric. And people ask me which my favorite, and I like them both. I really want to see what's going to happen, because normally when you have two cars and they do a conversion, or if you have a gas and electric car, they're not on the same playing field. They're
Sure.
different models or different X, different Y, and everybody says, well, it's because of that or because of this. In this situation, we're going to have two identical cars. They'll look the same. Obviously, they'll have different power plants, but other than that, they're fundamentally going to be the same identical car. As they stand right now, they almost are identical in weight. I have a racing scales, and so we did weigh the cars. They were a little different, but when we did the electric car, that actually included the battery, so it included power source. And we didn't have a fuel tank in. We didn't have the things in the gas car that you would need. So, we are thinking that the electric car is probably going to be a couple 100 pounds heavier as the battery technology exists today. But, that's subject to change as well. And so we can really see what's going to happen. These cars will be taken to the drag strip, and we'll do some autocross with them and just kind of, see what happens. I know you saw some of the videos and saw Rashad probably, and he's actually standing here. Rashad,
I saw. Hey, how you doing, Rashad? Nice to see you.
Good. Nice to meet you.
So, and Rashad, I can't blame him. He's probably part of the reason why I got more on the electric than I originally did. I met him at a car show, and he showed up in my shop here, and he's already made some crazy stuff. We had a twin electric scooter, and that thing did like 50 miles an hour.
I popped over to his channel too. I was watching the build of the Zero.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
So of course I'm an EV nut. So naturally, when looking at all of this, I tend to be biased towards the electric side of things. Let's start at where your videos start. With the building of the frame. how did you get to the point where you decided the dimensions of the car and how you were going to design a frame that essentially would allow for two different drivetrains?
So I actually went back and forth since I hadn't built the frame prior to making that decision. So I was lucky enough where I didn't have to go back and engineer things.
Mm-hmm.
As far as dimensions go, I basically used other supercars, as a kind of a drawing, as a blueprint. So, you talk about wheelbase and those types of things. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
So as I feel perfectly comfortable making my own chassis, I've done a lot of welding, a lot of chassis and stuff. When you start talking about suspension components as well as just suspension geometry, I didn't want to do that. That's a whole thing. You got to do a lot of math, a lot of science. And I figure, why bother? There's some cars out there that I can draw upon, and why reinvent the wheel? So with that said, and I might as well, and I can get them as a relatively cheap price.
Sure.
So when people look at the car and look at what we're doing, they're going, "Oh my God, the guy's spending just a ton of money." And to be perfectly honest with you, we really aren't. I mean, we're doing this on a pretty darn good budget. We actually bought the Tesla motor for $1,600. We got Chevy Volt batteries, 2 battery packs. Each one, you average it out, it'd been about $1,100 for both of them, or each one for 2 packs. And so that gave us 32 kilowatts of power.
Kilowatts. Yep.
Yep. We're buying converters, DC to DC converters for $125, chargers for $125. So we're not spending a ton. We're not just going, oh God, we got this.
Right. Yeah.
We're doing it very frugal. All the suspension components came off totaled cars.
The Corvettes.
Saw the frame. I couldn't buy a Corvette whole. It was too much money. So I bought 2 of them dirt cheap and kind of figured out where all the suspension needed to be.
Yep.
So when people look at it, I want them to think, oh my God, this is $1 million car. But in reality, this is something, if you have the technical skill set, you could do for a reasonable price frame.
Sure. And obviously having the proper tools as well. I mean, I haven't obviously been able to walk around your shop, but you've been like the adapter plate you made for the mount for the rear. Obviously you've got like a CNC machine and some other things that most people that might want to just go out there and build their own EV, they're probably not going to just have that laying around their garage.
Fair enough. But just to be perfectly fair, or perfectly honest with that. So all of those things, I do have multiple CNC machines. There was only one that's store-bought. Every other one that I actually made. Like I have a CNC plasma cutter that I made. I got a 3-axis one that we use for cutting soft materials like wood I made. And plastics. I do have a small one, a Tomahawk 3, so it's a hobbyist CNC machine that we use, and then the big 5-axis for cutting body panels.
Right.
All that stuff I made myself. There's a website called 80/20, and it's actually extruded aluminum. And you go in and you say, I want X, Y, these pieces. They cut them up, you set them, and you belt it all together. So it's a huge erector set. So I would agree that you have to have the right tools. But I also would push back and say, if you really have the drive and you really want to do it, I just read a lot, learned a lot, and it's been now a couple year journey at this point. But it's definitely doable for somewhat reasonable price frame, I guess.
Sure. And to the time that's involved, I mean, any car project, whether it's building it completely from the ground up or using an existing car, there's a lot of hours that you need to put into that. And really, you haven't even gotten to probably what's going to take the longest in terms of all the body work. But how many hours do you think you put into the car so far? And then overall,
well, that's
an idea of the total you might end up with.
Well, I don't want to think about that, to be perfectly honest with you. The reason why it's a tricky question. And I went into this going, okay, so actually I've driven a Ferrari. There's some events you can go, like pay money and test them out and stuff. And so I drove in a number of those cars, and the first thing that came to me was the seating positions usually weren't great, and the visual positions really weren't great. So I kind of said, well, I'm going to make the car after a form over function type thing, right? So I want to make it look really cool, but I have to be able to see. I have to be very comfortable in the driver's position. So with that said, yes, I have had some redos. We haven't had any major redos because what I was able to do with the frames is set them up side by side and actually get the length dialed in. We sat and, had boards and, mock-up steering wheels and everything. So that allowed me to completely dial in the overall dimensions on the frame and the width. But there was a lot of time involved in that, right? So you're moving things, sitting, getting up, looking around, is it comfortable? Is it not? So, and that's why I don't want to, because if I say, okay, well, if somebody hears this video in a couple of years, because we're contemplating making kits now, and now that we've got like a donor possibility with the Honda, it looks like it could be made into something of a kit. Which honestly, when we first started this project, didn't think that wasn't the goal. That wasn't even it wasn't even on the radar screen. It was more of I'm going to build this one up, but all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait a second, people might actually want this now. So the timing is a little tricky. Things are actually going much faster now that we've got the Honda too. You can kind of see it behind us there. So you saw the video, that we had a major setback, and I probably didn't work on the car for realistically about 2 months after the windshield debacle. We also had a battery blew up, and that was another lesson on the EV stuff. I think there's a huge learning curve right now. Your companies that cater to your electric crowd, such as Holley and Edelbrock and all these names that have been around in the racing industries for years, they have you buy it, you bolt it on, it's ready to go. The EV world, it's like, oh, wait a second, you got to solder this wire, and and you call this guy, and it's like, maybe that didn't work. Oh no, you got a J connector instead of a Y connector. Yeah, you can't do that. So it's very exciting times, to be honest with you.
Sure.
As a person who's had hot rods ever since I was 16 years old, seeing the next generation evolve and having a computer background, has certainly helped elevate the drive for it. But it's definitely, and Rashad, you maybe want to speak a little bit to this, because that's probably the biggest lesson on the whole thing is just the learning curve on it. Trying to get the large Tesla motor to work. We used a board that didn't work great. Now we're using Damien's open inverter board. But ultimately, that's probably going to be, don't want to give away too much, but this car is going to be really, really fast.
Sure. So that motor can handle plenty of juice.
Well, we're talking about switching over to 800 volts for the batteries. So, and a different inverter altogether, and leave the motor and
packs in parallel then.
Yep.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking about but that involves, you get into that kind of voltage, you got insulation problems with your wire, because the potential actually, exceeds the actual insulation factors. So there's certain things that have to be taken into consideration. As much as we tongue in cheek, we try to be cautious. We are dealing with, the battery packs are live. They're, charged up to 360, 370,
Sure.
So, there's some serious voltage around the shop, so we're trying to be cautious as much as possible. But, I will say it's kind of the Wild West.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely as well.
If you don't mind me asking, and you don't need to answer, because I know it does push a little bit, but what did happen to that volt battery pack?
So what happened was I misunderstood how much a BMS did. Mm-hmm. I was thinking that it was not only discharging, but charging at the same time, and kind of trying to balance the cells a lot more efficiently. And maybe some of them do. The one we have doesn't. It takes a very, very long time to bleed off the energy.
Sure.
And so what was happening was we were charging it and had the BMS all hooked up, but we had one pack that was out of sequence basically, and so I was thinking it was going to fix itself because the BMS was gone there.
Okay.
But in reality, we needed to get the one pack that was out of balance a whole lot closer prior to charging.
Sure.
And when we didn't do that, it basically caused the whole thing to turn into a big resistor and basically pop those cells. So and that's a lesson that it's logical now, but at the time it's like, well, we have the BMS hooked up. The BMS is going to take care of it. Well, the BMS, it has to be in pretty close tolerances, is what we figured out for the BMS that we're currently using. Yeah. And because of this, because of what we actually learned, we're actually talking to other people in motorsports, because if you start really running batteries, you're going to get them out of balance a lot faster than what you would normally do on a car that's being driven, because you almost get a natural balancing effect as you drive the car distance. But if you try to dump all your current, in a matter of a few seconds, those batteries are going to get out of sequence because the chemistry in the batteries, right? So, lesson learned, and we're taking our findings back to other people and saying, hey, wait, the BMS is got to be able to do a lot better job of quickly discharging, and it would be great if it could charge those cells that were really out of balance instead of just discharging, also actually, somehow charging those cells. I do know electronics, but I can't, tell you how to go about doing that. But that's something that we're actually talking to people about, going, if you really want this to be, something, this is going to have to occur. Sure. But then simultaneously, you got other battery technologies that may make BMS completely obsolete too. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that as well. So
yeah. Now I know at one point you were thinking about having more of a hybrid system between the Tesla modules and the Volt battery packs. Was there a specific reason why you decided one way or the other?
Cost. Honestly, when you and actually performance. So the Volt batteries actually discharge faster. According to like what I've researched, I've done,
read that too.
Volt batteries discharge faster than Tesla ones. Tesla is obviously designed for range, right? Where, if we get 60 miles on a charge, that's fine with us. We're not looking for range. This is, this is about performance. What can a moderately priced, EV car, do? Can it be a top contender in a drag race? Can it be a top contender in in a autocross? Other motorsports disciplines where you're not talking about super long distances. You're just talking about performance aspect. Yeah, and we know, yes, you can take a Tesla right now and strip it down, right, and run it through the drag strip. It'll go really, really fast. You paid a lot of money for that. Is there a viable option that's much cheaper? If I think that's, and ultimately when we put a price tag on these things and people care how much we're paying for stuff, it's like, well, how did you find it so cheap? Well, we made phone calls. It's like, we just didn't go on eBay. We called the local wrecking yards. We've gone to the salvage yards. We've pulled the stuff out of the cars ourselves, and dug through the dirt, and literally dug through dirt. And it was muddy that one place. It was just, So, if you're willing to do that, you can build an electronic or EV car, at a fraction of what people think you can. But you have to do the legwork,
Sure. Well, and you certainly are putting in not only the muscle work, but also the brain work as well, to really think through what your goals are for the project and how to accomplish that really efficiently. It sounds like you're very methodical in the steps that you're taking to make sure that you're not getting a little too far ahead of yourself. You're really taking your time to make sure that you're taking it through the process.
Yeah. So, the old saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, so that's what I keep telling Rashad. I'm like, don't worry about that. We need to just focus on the problem at hand. The thing is we're not trying to build the smallest package. If you look at the car, it's on the length of a Lamborghini Aventador or a LaFerrari. So it's a long car, so we've got space. That's a lot of other problems people face with EV car conversions, right? Where are they going to put all the components, Sure. With our car, we've got a very low center of gravity. The batteries are literally 4 inches off the ground, and we're not trying to, stick them here and stick them there. It is, the frames were modified, so that they were both match. And so it's like the tunnel was widened, because the gas car was really skinny at first, right? Then we had to make the gas car wider, but that's where the fuel tank's going to go, exactly where the batteries go, So yes, we basically are taking and solving every single problem as we go down the road, not worrying about every last little problem, knowing that we've got the overall dimensions of a car that should support, the overall aspirations.
Sure. And do you plan on making the cars road legal as well?
Yes. So I've built a number of kit cars and happen to live in Georgia, which does happen to be friendly for kit cars. But now we got a little interesting note, right? So now that we're using the Honda Civic base, technically we think it actually is still a Honda Civic, because It's going to have the VIN. It's going to have, it's missing 10 inches off the bottom of the frame,
Right.
and obviously the front and the back. But, you know, what classifies a car? Because realistically, the VIN is still on the car, you know, so you know, if somebody wanted to, you know, they could probably just say, look, it's a modified Honda Civic. What is somebody going to say?
Yeah, depending on the state and local.
Yeah, state and local regs.
But for us, they don't even look at the car when you go to register it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I did read that you would be considering selling them. Would you sell them separately, or want to try to see if somebody would want to buy them as a pair?
I don't know. You know, that's a hard question. Yeah. So the gas one, while it's going to be near and dear to my heart. I'm you know, I'm an old gas guy, right? So
Sure.
that one won't evolve that much. The electric one, I'm building it so that I can actually do upgrades, right? So I can actually change the motor, change the batteries as the technology changes. So I'm thinking that one's going to be more of a mule almost, you know. So for my next projects, you know, I'm relatively young still, and I got a partner in crime here. He wants to build more things. So as long as we don't blow the place up, you know, we'll. This is probably only the first iteration of these cars. So
yeah, we're already thinking about upgrading the batteries, you know, because with the OEMs coming online.
Oh yeah,
the stuff is really becoming a lot more plentiful. With instances such as BMW has a lot of hybrid vehicles. We got Toyota. We got a plethora of, you know, high quality EV components at bottom dollar prices. So it's a really exciting time to be in the industry.
Yeah,
it is for sure. So I want to talk more about the body design and how I mean, of course, you're using the 5-axis to really design the foam plug. You've got somebody there that is working with fiberglass really in an expert way.
We don't do fiberglass. We do carbon fiber.
Okay.
So we're doing infused carbon fiber, extremely lightweight, extremely rigid parts. Fiberglass is okay. I'm not going to knock it too much, but fiberglass has a tendency to be too heavy, to be honest with you, because people do wet layups, and wet layups have a problem because if you have a pool of not the glass, but the resin anywhere, if it gets hot, it'll actually start flexing and warping and doing some things of that nature. When you do vacuum bagged infused carbon fiber, it don't move. You know, it is a very, very rigid product, very lightweight product. We've done some more pulling of some molds for some other projects. So how the body's going to work is actually a couple of people have approached me and said, hey, can I design your car? And I'm like, sure, if you guys want to take a crack at it. My criteria, it was before we start doing the design, to set the roof height. And as you can see behind us now, we can actually get in the car with a racing helmet and sit in the seat comfortably. Yes. So, and that's, I think I have to measure it real quick, but I think it's 45 inches off the ground. And so now that we've established that parameter, that's the last of the parameters it takes before we can do some designing of the actual body frames or the body panels, because that's all cosmetic. You know, there's no, I mean, the way we're going about it, it's going to add a little bit of rigidity, but not a whole lot. It's mostly just a cosmetic skin. So we're going to make the scan available. The car will be scanned in, and then, you know, you can go ahead and to your heart's content and design on it. And if we like it, we'll cut it out. If we don't like it, you know, it's you can make a nice what do you call that? A nice rendering, rendering, and post it online. You know, so I don't want to say a contest per se, but I'm opening it up, you know, and say, you know, yeah, if we use it, you know, we're not necessarily, we'll give you credit. We're not necessarily going to pay you for it, but we'll, you know, we can certainly say designed by, you know, but yeah, that's, you know, I am partial to the front, where we're going with the front right now. The back is, you know, so the challenge with building a car yourself is the glass. So finding glass that you can work with. You can obviously get glass made. That's expensive. You can get, you know, nice curvatures, and, you know, your high-end cars, they're obviously, you know, even the small production units, they're making their own glass. So again, we're on budget here. So so we had to find glass that was in our price range. So yes, I spent a ton of money on the Aventador glass because realistically, I didn't think I could get a glass big enough that had that long profile, because normally glass is really short.
Yep.
We need long glass, relatively narrow long glass to get that line that I was, wanted. I really wanted a front engine look, or a supercar look, mid-engine, so needed a fairly aggressive rake. And so, so that really put some design constraints around where we could get glass from.
Mm-hmm.
So when the glass broke and had to really do some soul searching and go find some more glass, luckily it happens to be that this actually is the exact same length. So the angle is almost identical to what I had just mocked up when we were doing the seating position. It's a little more, but I didn't want it, back to like, hey, does somebody actually maybe want to buy one of these or make one of themselves? We chose to leave it, ripping the skins off, gets rid of the bubble, a Honda bubbly look,
Yes.
So now it's much more angular. And so the side glass, I was always worried about the side glass and the front glass.
Mm-hmm.
You can run Lexan on the side, it's going to probably scratch. So I was trying to avoid it, but I was willing to compromise on the side. But heck, I don't even need to compromise on the side anymore.
Sure.
I can run
Well,
regular
you didn't change the rake at all from the 06 Civic. I mean,
no,
exactly just the way it is.
It's exactly the way it is. The big difference is on the Civic is this part up here. They make it's 2 inches higher and just with the skin. So they make this kind of a round, bubbly look by just putting the body skin on it, like it's got this lip there.
Yeah.
So just getting rid of that skin and pulling it down really, gives the rake a much more aggressive line than in their car.
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing how you can transform something that,
utilitarian car into something that looks something.
Really, it looks, to me anyway, so much better. I mean, it's smoother. The lines are just, it's not your little family car anymore, right?
No, it's definitely taken on a much more aggressive look. So people were joking the other day. It's like, well, we've got Honda, we got Chevy Corvette, we got Chevy Volt, we got the gas car has a Lamborghini transmission and a Ford motor and Tesla and so we're trying to get all the manufacturers involved here. So somebody says, well, what is it? It's like, we'll say, well, what isn't it?
Sure. Sure. So have you thought about, aside from the project, have you thought about naming the cars?
Yes. So the electric car is called Archangel. Ooh. And it will be painted a silver with right now it's up to again, I don't want to make hard fast rules, but in my head it's going to be silver with a very light green racing stripe, and then the gas car is going to be called Sinister, and it'll be black with a red stripe.
Excellent. I love the the good versus evil there.
Yeah. So an Archangel, so electric and,
it has ARC before.
Yeah, it's like ARC.
ARC, absolutely. Yeah, I love names that have dual meanings.
Yeah. The gas car, we're still 100%. The electric car is done. It's Archangel for sure. There's no doubt on that one. But the gas car may change. So anyway, but that's kind of our thought right now.
That's great. When you're working with the chargers and the inverter and everything, you're working with the CAN bus system. I noticed that you had your Mac laptop out. What kind of software are you working with there?
So we're actually working with a couple of different things. We're using some OEM tools as well as CAN sniffers. So they actually grab the CAN data. So we're using some off-the-shelf components currently, but we are in the process of taking that CAN data and actually copying it down and being able to use it into a holistic system. Part of the challenge with an EV system today is you're going to have your BMS, then you have some kind of controller that converts, that turns on your, DC to DC, and your charger, and they all existed in a car at one point that gave a CAN bus signal, right. But they don't really talk great to each other. If you want a really nice display of your batteries, you don't have that with your tachometer and your speedometer, and you have to go look at a different LED screen and so forth. So we're in talks with somebody to hopefully help solve that problem, so that ultimately you're going to have one unit that would allow you to see your battery display, that would allow you to turn on your charger. It doesn't matter if it's it doesn't matter if it's an OEM charger or an aftermarket charger. It's that ability to say, yes, I've got this charger. And that was actually a huge part of the learning curve on the EV. Gas wasn't, that's don't need it. Just get some. We got a bunch of different sensors. We plug them in, and life goes on. With the EV stuff, though, we had to learn. What was that CAN bus ID, and what was the signal, and reproducing that signal, and
yeah, and I know you had touched a little bit on the pulse module for the water pump.
Yes.
Where you can, it's not just a straight on off, where different conditions will allow it to run at different speeds and everything. And you mentioned a secret ECU. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you're like?
Yes, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
So one computer to control it all. It's like the Lord of the Rings.
Yes, so it's not there yet, and we're not really wanting to talk about it just yet. But that is the notion at this point of my vision to make this thing a long-term viability for EV for aftermarket. That's what you got to have. You can't have all these disparate systems. You can't.
Right.
You have to have something that back to the I referred to like a Holley or an Edelbrock, right? They fixed a problem. They kind of work with each other. So especially nowadays, it's like they're paired systems. It's like, okay, well, if you buy this Holley, you really need this Edelbrock to make them work properly together. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about electronics, so you really need something that actually is just a holistic, thing. It doesn't really matter if you have Chevy Volt batteries. It doesn't matter if you soldered all your dang batteries together yourself. You need to be able to have that in a simple display. You don't need to have a laptop, and that's what we're doing right now, right? That's for the EV performance industry to grow. You really need that holistic system, and
make it simple so that
it's got to be very user friendly.
It's got to be very user friendly.
Yeah,
point. I have spent back to hours. I've spent like a ton of hours just trying to understand CAN bus. Coming from my background as a hot rodder, we didn't have no CAN bus. There was, what is this CAN bus you speak of? It's like lucky I have a computer background, so I understood it was a network. And I understood the concept of it. And it took a little while, though, to get my, just head around the IDs. And because, in my world, it's like, well, wait, how does that work? So there was, it's almost back to the old computer days where you're not really giving it full commands, right? You're just giving it bits and bytes, ons and off. And you have to translate that into something, versus, how you program a computer nowadays. You very much spell it out.
Sure. So to make it easier for people that will watch all of your videos, and obviously I recommend that everybody would watch all of your videos. People are going to want to replicate what you've done. They're going to see what you're doing, and you are inspiring people currently.
I hope so.
I've got a car sitting in the backyard that I've just been waiting to convert. So, what would be your best advice for somebody that is just in the thought phase of any project, the planning phase, where they know they want to do something, but they don't know where to start? What would be your advice from the very beginning to somebody just to help them get moving?
Go build a scooter. Go build an EV scooter, because and that seems simple or silly, but you get a controller, so you understand regenerative braking. So because that's a word, it's like, okay, well, wait a second, what does that actually mean? Because you got to think through, certain aspects, right? So, and you're going to blow up stuff. You will absolutely destroy things. I've destroyed a charger. I destroyed a DC to DC converter. So don't do it with expensive components. Go start a simple project, something that you say, when I'm done with my project, I'll sell it, give it away, whatever. But that way you're not into it so over your head, like you're buying these, DC to DC chargers that, they're not expensive, $125, but if you start blowing them up, right and left trying to learn, it gets expensive in a hurry. So I think my advice is build a scooter, build an electric scooter,
or a go-kart or something.
Or go-kart, we got electric drift trikes at one point. Yep. So, build something that is doable, something that could take you just a couple of weekends, and then start getting components to that. You could actually put a DC to DC charger on a smaller unit, you know, a 72 volt unit, and try to get something to understand CAN bus. You know, you don't have to be a CAN bus expert, but you have to understand, well, you know, what you got two wires, you know, what happens if you don't get them two right? And what happens about if you don't have a resistor? If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, then you know, that's my point, is buy something cheap and simple that you can kind of experiment with. So you're not, you know, going, oh my God, I got to make this work because I just spent all this money on it, you know. And I don't necessarily recommend, I hate to say it, but I don't recommend all the components that people are putting together right now. You can get better components, OEM components, than you can through a number of sources, I believe. You know, you just have to put the work into getting the CAN bus right. You know, they do the work for you, right? And they need to get paid. But if you're willing to do the work yourself, you can certainly get a leg up. And it's really, once you actually understand it, it's surprisingly simple. But the problem is the understanding. And there's great videos and people talk about it. But for me, until I physically do it, it's really doesn't always stick. You know, it's just kind of like that. You know, I'm not connecting A to B. You know, and then when I get there, I'm like, oh, that's what the guy was talking about now. You know, it's like, oh, I get it now. It's like, oh, I don't know why they didn't stick the first time, but yeah.
Sure. So you are physically in Atlanta, Georgia, in that area. When this is finished, do you plan on possibly taking it around and traveling and showing it off as an example of what's possible?
Yes. So there's a huge car show in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Caffeine and Octane. It is actually the largest car show in the U.S. that happens on a monthly basis. They actually have a television show on, and it's NBC Sports Network. So it's actually edited and taped and so forth. So we are absolutely going to be talking to those guys. And there's also a private race course called AMP, Atlanta Motorsports Park. And I actually know some people over there. So we will do trial runs over there. So it will definitely, these are not going to be trailer queens. You know, they will be driven. I mean, we might have to trailer the electric car a little bit.
Yeah,
but you know, just because of the distance. Because we're not shooting for range, people. This is
you want to run it when it's got, you know, a full battery.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to get to the track and have 20% left.
Exactly. So we'll definitely be making the rounds. You know, in the up and coming videos, we actually have access to a hub dyno, so we will actually be putting down real numbers with both cars. You know, and you know, we've got permission, or you know, if we blow it up, we blow it up. So we'll be sending it. You know, give a little bit of a secret away. We're afraid right off the bat, so we're going to pull the batteries out of the electric car. It'll be hooked up, but they'll be physically away from the actual car itself. So, should they decide to catch fire, they'll just be outside burning away peacefully. So, you know, we're going to try. We're going to see what happens. You know, you know, I refer back to this like the old days, right? I did say Wild West, and it's the old car days, right? I mean, there was a lot of fires in those first race cars.
Oh, sure.
You know, we're going to be hopefully a little safer than they are, but at the same point, this, you know, we're not, you know, we're building it for performance. We're building it for fun. We're building it to see what it'll do. You know, it's the proverbial, you know, let's see what it'll do. You know. Yeah. Can you put how much current can you put to a Tesla motor without before it seizes up, you know, or something? So, and I mean, I am trying to put a time frame on myself to have them actually drivable by the end of the year. So that's my goal. So, well, I don't know if I'm going to hit it, but that's my goal. So both of them, for some stupid reason, I'm going to put it both out there. That I'm going to have both. They might not be 100% done, but you know, to a point where I can actually take them out and drive them around. That's
sure. Yeah, we're not going to have the radio working quite yet.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You know, now that we've got the Honda, you know, that's a huge thing. So I've got dash. You know, I'll have air conditioning, heating, because I don't have to create all that kind of stuff. You know, right. I was going to use aftermarket components, and my other cars I've used like vintage air and those types of things, but I don't have to do that anymore. It's like, okay, wait a second. The dash will be reskinned and restyled, but all of the behind the work, the you know, the condenser, the heater and heater core and the fans and the light switches and all that stuff, you know, we're really going to plan on reusing the Honda. I bought this Honda, you know, just back to cheap. I bought this for $350, you know. So the But now, because originally it was only going to keep the windshield frame, but now everything is lining up so well and looking really so good. I'm going to go buy a running Honda and have all the panels in and have all, I'll change the seats out. I'm not going to use those seats.
Right.
But, having the, all the plastic trim and being able to just, cover that with leather and, and be able to change things up, but still have, 90% of the hard lifting done is going to make things go a lot better. And that's one of the reasons why I want to use the door itself is because now I got a perfect weather stripping. They've done the work on creating a nice weather strip with a nice, not picking up a lot of air noise and, wind noise and that kind of stuff. So I'll just reuse that, so just, it's really, somebody said sometimes you have to have a really bad situation. I was using Lamborghini glass and I was going to have to develop all those things myself. But now, that was a blessing in disguise, so to speak, because now we're able to just really, jumpstart the project and really, kick along. I mean, I'll be posting on my Instagram, coming up here, and I've actually have another video coming out here probably next week or so. Takes me a little longer on the videos because I'm a one-man shop, so I have to do the car work and then I have to edit the video. But yeah, you'll see the body lines coming in fairly quickly. So, and Rashad's in the way right now, but the back window there, it looks like that's going to be MR2 glass, Toyota MR2. So we get a little Toyota in the mix too. So.
Something else. That's awesome. Well, Brian and Rashad, both of you, I want to thank you for taking some time to really just talk about this project and share some of your expertise as well as your experience with everybody. And of course, you can share with everybody what's the best way to find you, to follow the project as you continue from here.
So you can find me on most major social media. The car itself is actually the project itself is called Split Decision. So you can find it as #Split Decision. I'm also XS Motorworks. Even though that sounds like a big company, it's kind of just my little company that hopefully will be a company someday. And I've got Rashad. He's at Invoke Pro.
Invoke
Performance.
Yeah, Performance.
And so he's helping out a lot with the electric stuff and electronics. But and obviously we're making a lot of traction, a lot of headway. And if you're in Atlanta and want to come see it, I have an open shop. It's my own private little shop, and we're happy to have people come by and take a look.
I really hope that you all got as much out of talking with Brian as I did. And anybody that's interested in building your own EV or a DIY project, I really recommend going and watching all of their videos because you will get a lot of great knowledge and information about the process, as well as just being able to see them work through everything on their own. So I will go ahead and put a link to both of their YouTube channels in the show notes so that you guys can take a look at all of that as well. So, of course, this week was not void of a plethora of EV news, and honestly, we're already, close to 45 minutes in, so I'm not going to go through everything that happened, or even bring the amount of content and stories that I would normally do for you. But I do want to bring two that I thought were fascinating to me. The first actually was about a Tesla Model 3 owner that built a solar panel trailer to tow behind his Model 3, and I'll explain why I said kind of. But I found this actually, it was reported by Teslarati.com. They actually picked this up. Sean Callahan of It's Your Boy YouTube channel, that's ITSYEBOI, that's how he spells that. He actually went out and bought a bunch of solar panels off of Wish, the e-commerce platform, to then put them together and charge some batteries, and then from the batteries through an inverter to charge the Tesla Model 3. In total, he had bought 8 100-watt panels. So in the best of conditions, this should be able to provide 800 watts of energy, of course, on a completely sunny day. However, when Callahan was shooting the video, the weather was not cooperating. It was overcast, so the entire panel assembly was only able to provide about 600 watts. He had two different solar controllers that were providing 300 watts each. It's a really, really fascinating video. I think just more than anything is a proof of concept. Yeah, if you have only 800 watts of solar panels, it's going to take you many, 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 many hours to charge a Model 3 to its entirety. But guess what? 90% of the time, cars are sitting stationary. So if you had something like this, or if you built it yourself, to continue with that DIY mentality for, I guess, the theme of this week's episode, you could very easily do exactly what he did, buy all of this, put it together, and have a charger that you can take with you. Let's say you wanted to go 50 miles away from the nearest charger, go camping or something like that. You could do that. Or if you just wanted to charge off of solar power, drive on sunshine, as it were, you could do that too. So I wanted to bring this story to you because it really highlights and connects a few things. One, the DIY aspect. I think we're getting to a point in the EV community where more and more people are wanting to tinker with their cars. You know, the traditional car modification that you can do with a gas-powered car, like Brian was saying, actually, is really easy to do with a gas-powered car. You just throw on some new parts, maybe these days retune the computer or have that done, and you can have more power or change the performance of the car. With EVs, it's just so much more difficult. So I love that we're starting to see that change just little by little. We're making little baby steps, to me, in the right direction. And that includes being able to charge with solar panels. Now, I do think if Sean Callahan had actually bought some more expensive panels, you can get solar panels that are 250 watts. So if you had 8 of those, of course, now you're at 2 kilowatts of potential energy. My car, the Spark EV, charges at 1.4 kilowatts on level 1 AC charging, you know, your 120 volt AC. So that's not too ridiculous to think that it's possible. Now, granted, solar panels, you're going to be paying a little bit less than $1 per watt. So if you have 2,000 watts or 2 kilowatts of energy, you've likely spent probably around $1,800 to $2,000 for those panels alone. And then if you factor in the cost of batteries, a trailer if you don't have one, the inverters, the charge controllers, and all of that, you know, obviously now you're talking about something that's a lot more expensive. But at a certain point, considering that solar energy is free, it's only a matter of time before something like this will pay for itself. You just have to use it that much. Okay, so the very last bit of news that I want to bring you this week actually is coming out of Germany. This article I found on cleantechnica.com. They are reporting that Germany is doubling the current incentive for plug-in hybrids and 100% battery electric vehicles. Germany announced new terms of a 130 billion euro economic recovery package that will last until the end of 2021. Manufacturers will be able to kick in another 3,000 euro incentive, bringing the total available incentives for EV buyers up to 9,000 euro. And here's the good part, or the part that I love: buyers of conventional gas-powered vehicles will get nothing. No incentives whatsoever. When it comes to EV policy, obviously this outside of EV owners tends to be very controversial. A lot of the general public does not want to see subsidies going towards EVs. I'm not going to get into the politics of all this. In terms of EV adoption and pushing the world forward, this is the right thing to do. There are some restrictions for the plug-in car subsidies. The full incentive only applies to cars with a sales price of less than 40,000 euro. So this is not subsidies for the rich to go out there and buy more of the luxury vehicles. Now, this is probably going to affect Volkswagen significantly in terms of their ability to sell the ID3 and ID4 battery electric cars before the end of this year. And then, of course, Tesla, once they get the Berlin Gigafactory up and running, they should be able to take advantage of this incentive period as well before it expires at the end of 2021. Other car companies that are in Europe selling EVs, like Kia, Hyundai, Peugeot, they should easily be beneficiaries of the new incentive program. They all offer models that are less than that $40,000 threshold. The next kind of tier is that 60,000 euro threshold, and they will be available for incentives, but it's a reduced incentive package. So it's up to $7,500 per car instead of the $9,000. And plug-in hybrids will get a cut as well. So that's as much as 6,750 euro for the vehicles below 40,000 and 5,625 euro for vehicles that cost between 40 and 65,000 euro for the plug-in hybrids. There's also a reduced company car tax for EVs, which is great for those companies that are going to offer EVs to their employees. It's a 0.25% reduced rate that now applies to a raised ceiling of EVs with list prices up to 60,000 euro, and that was previously at 40. So that should also help quite a bit, because at that point then you're looking at your fleet cars, any EV that's owned by a business versus a private consumer. Well, I think this really represents a huge step forward for Germany, and it's ultimately consistent with the goal of aggressively lowering carbon emissions from its transportation sector. And the commitment really is an inspiration to other countries that are trying to figure out how to support emissions goals despite all of the economic fallout from the coronavirus. We've seen Norway lead the world when it comes to per capita EV ownership, and I think this is likely going to be something that will push Germany up that list as well. So that is all for this week. Before I go and thank everybody, I did want to share an announcement regarding the EV Resource magazine. We are making a shift in order to better, or rather keep track better of how many people are being reached and reading the magazine. So it is now going to be available to Patreon subscribers. That level is $1 a month. That is the lowest that you can actually set anything on Patreon. And the reason that we put it there is because we do not want to restrict access to the great content, the exclusive content, I will also add, that's in the EV Resource magazine. So that will be released on the first Saturday of every month. That would be June 6th, this month. And this month's magazine is entirely about generating, storing, and then using your own energy. So really diving into solar energy generation with solar panels, battery backup storage, and then also about, of course, electric vehicles and all about EV batteries. Because, of course, once the battery is finished in the car, you can then use that for static battery storage. So it's a fantastic issue this month. I definitely would encourage all of you guys to go over to Patreon, become a subscriber so that you can have full access to the magazine. You can find us there at patreon.com/EV Resource. So thank you to everyone who supports this show, either simply by listening or sharing with your friends. I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. I encourage everybody to like and comment on the videos on the YouTube channel. And if you want to listen to any of the previous episodes of the EV Resource podcast, you can find them on our webpage under the podcast section, and also in any of the major podcast platforms like Apple, iTunes, Podcasts. It's Apple Podcasts now, not iTunes. Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and many others. Specifically on Apple Podcasts, any reviews that you guys can give, good, bad, or otherwise, honestly, would be greatly appreciated because that will help many more people find the EV Resource Podcast. And as always, I invite you to come say hi on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and even LinkedIn now. We've got a EV Resource LinkedIn page. So thank you very much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.